Never thought I would have to make a PSA about this, but ladies and gentlemen, we do not, and I repeat, we do not need Peeps cereal. I literally was just at the grocery store, walked down the aisle, was picking up some bread for my wife to go ahead and make us toast, and lo and behold, Peeps is coming out with a cereal. We have to put a limit on things that need to be turned into actual products we have never asked for. This is where I draw the line. Peeps are disgusting already. We don't need it in the form to where you put milk on it and let it swirl together and destroy your stomach system and probably your toilet as well. Welcome on into Sunday Funday, April 6, 2025. As always, we do have a jam-packed show for you. So if you haven't already, make sure you like the video, hit the ring notification, and of course, subscribe to the channel because we talk college football every single day. Download the podcast version of the show wherever you get your podcast listening systems. Follow us on the socials, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, at SEC Unfiltered. Follow me for the back and forth banner at Mr. Cole Thompson. And as always, check out our great work found at secunfiltered.com. And this video is proudly sponsored by our friends over at FANDUEL. Go visit FANDUEL.com/SECU and join today with $200 in bonus bets when you win your first $5 bet. So if you haven't already joined, make sure you sign on up for Monday night or today when South Carolina plays for a shot at winning another national title. Throw some money down, win that bet. You'll get $200 in bonus bets when you make your first deposit and win. So sign up today at FANDUEL.com/SECU. Jam-packed show as always. College football championship tiers is a conversation that we have to talk about. Tennessee spring news has been kind of taking over the message boards, and I want to kind of dive into what we have heard so far coming out of Knoxville. The biggest hypothetical that I could think of today, and we're going to start doing these a little bit more, hypotheticals of what I think will happen first. And Alabama's quarterback battle is raging on in Tuscaloosa, but we still don't have an answer, which honestly, not that big of a negativity in my personal opinion. Let's start off with college football championship tiers. Which teams in the SEC can actually hoist up a national title in 2025 down in Miami Gardens, Florida, when all is said and done? Well, before we go into any of that, let's start off with what do we think of college football this year? And more importantly, what do we think of the SEC this year? Because when we look at the SEC, naturally, we're going to have our front runners, our no doubt about it contenders, the teams that we expect to be in the running down in November for a shot at Atlanta, making it to the college football playoff, getting that first round bye, or at least hosting a playoff game, whether that be in Sanford Stadium or Bryant-Denny Stadium or Tiger Stadium. Death Valley would absolutely be a historic event. But what I want to talk about is, do we believe that it's going to be a cut and dry year in the SEC? That we're going to have teams that end up being the best of the bunch and everybody else just kind of second fiddle. What we initially thought we were going to see in 2024, 4 or 5 teams right up here, and then a massive drop-off of teams that were kind of falling under the wagon. Or are we going to have a bit of complexity? Are we going to see teams come out of nowhere, really build themselves up, have a pretty polished resume to where when we are entering the final stages, we have to have that conversation of, well, SMU only played one ranked opponent all year and they lost, versus the SEC that had 4 teams go 9-3, and probably at least 3 of them deserve to be in that hunt for the 12th seed. That's what we're wondering right now. So if we are going to go with option B, I think that there's a lot of teams that can actually contend. But I do think that there are also an option A, which is more of a broader, I would say probably stable scenario, that we're going to have about 5 or 6. But let's start off with teams that I'm going to have in the bottom tier, which I just call like a bowl game. How about you just go ahead and worry about not trying to play down in Miami Gardens, Florida? How about you don't worry about trying to make it to Atlanta? You just want to be able to say, hey, we got one more game in the month of December. Mississippi State, Kentucky, and Arkansas. Those are my 3. If you're able to go ahead and put together some quality wins, have a roster with a good infrastructure, and realize that the future is pretty bright for you, I'm okay with that. If this is a year where you end up just going 6-6 and punching your ticket to a bowl game in December, I call that a win. Let's move on to the next tier, which is, could it happen? Potentially, but I'm not going to put my money down on it. Auburn's in this tier. I think Auburn right now, the expectation should be you go probably about 8-4, maybe 9-3. It's a very good wide receiver room. It's a very good offensive line. They got 3 guys returning with 20 combined total starts. The defense should be as advertised because of, you remember that DJ Durkin was getting looked at for the Ohio State defense coordinator job and the Notre Dame defense coordinator job. And they said, nope, We can't lose you, so you're sticking around in the Plains. We're giving you a $2 million pay raise, so you're in a good spot, DJ Durkin. The quarterback play is going to be the deciding factor. What version of Jackson Arnold are we getting in 2025? Because for my money, I still believe that Jackson Arnold was a part of the problem, but not the entire problem down in Oklahoma. And we know this because of Oklahoma completely hit the reset button when it comes to finding their next offensive personnel. Brand new offensive coordinator, brand new quarterback coach. If he ends up fitting better for Hugh Freeze's system in a year where Freeze is facing the heat, then I think that things could absolutely change. I see a scenario where they can at least get a win over Alabama or over Georgia. Both games are going to be played at Jordan-Hare this year, and we know that madness occurs at Jordan-Hare once a year. So who's to say they can't get that win? Who's to say that they can't beat Baylor in week 1? Who's to say that they can't find a way to beat Missouri? They nearly did so last season. So I actually have a little bit of hope that Auburn is going to turn the corner. Overall, decent offensive personnel, and I think that they have a pretty solid defensive backfield as well. Vanderbilt's in this category. You got Diego Pavia back and you got Eli Stowers. That's phenomenal. That's a win in itself. We get more of Baba Yaga down in Nashville for 2025. And again, this could be a team that I think is competing for 8 or 9 wins if all things go according to plan. But the problem is that I do have questions when it comes to the offensive line. You are having 4 new starters. You are going to have to find a secondary weapon not named Junior Sherrill at the wide receiver position just to take some pressure off of Eli Stowers. And how good is this defense going to be in year 2 with Clark Lee calling the shots? If you can answer all of those questions really early on in the year, I think there's a scenario where absolutely you can get to at least 9 wins, finish the year with a number attached to your name. But I'm not putting money on you to go to the college football playoff just yet, Vanderbilt. However, I have been wrong before, and I will clearly be wrong again. Florida belongs in this category as well. Bottom line is that we don't know what's going on with DJ Lagway. I don't think that that's an entire negative at this point. Let's maybe put our doom and gloom scenarios and doomsday hypotheticals to the wayside just for I would say at least another, let's go about 3 more months. Now, when we get to week 1 and Long Island comes around and there's no speculation of DJ Lagway coming back, we can have those conversations. But they do like their wide receiver room. I think Jaden Ball has an opportunity to be the best running back in the SEC for 2025. I also think that their defense is going to be better than what it was last year, mainly because it can't be any worse than it was last year. You got one dude now calling the shots in Ron Roberts, and I think that you did a good job of replenishing in the last 2 recruiting classes for guys that you believe can be difference makers. It is a veteran unit. 8 juniors or seniors will be starting for the Gators in 2025. Just that schedule is brutal. You don't know what you're going to get in DJ Lagway fully healthy. You don't know what you're going to get in Billy Napier's offensive personnel. There's just a lot of things that I look at and I say to myself, you know what? Let's go ahead and kind of put that to the wayside. I think 9 wins for most teams would be a pretty good year. For Florida, it would be a winning formula to say the least. Last one in this category for me right now, I'm going to go with Oklahoma. And the reason I'm putting Oklahoma here is because I'm actually a lot higher on Oklahoma than most people are. I believe that this Sooners team was not as bad as they looked last season. There were so many inconsistencies with the play calling. Hated the hire of Seth Luttrell from the get-go. Never thought he should have been in the running. The offensive line was a turnstile, and they had to replace 4 starters, and the injuries continue to pile on up. You look at several of the games, if they had one wide receiver that was a consistent force, having a Deion Burks healthy, not having Bauer Sharp drop the ball left and right, they probably could have been an 8-win team last year. And so now you're upgrading when it comes to your play caller. Ben Arbuckler's coming on in from Pullman. I absolutely think that he is going to hit from the ground running. You also have the quarterbacks coach coming on in. I also think right now when you look at this team and you say to yourself, what are we missing? Well, you were missing a quarterback last year that didn't fit the system. You aren't getting much better than John Mateer, who's already been pretty much baptized in what is this air raid up-tempo passing attack underneath Ben Arbuckle. Giovanni Gibson, I think from coming on in from Arkansas Pine Bluff, has an opportunity to kind of set his tone really early on in the year. You're also going to have a healthy Deion Burks, which I think is a massive win. This schedule is just brutal. When you talk about one of the teams that probably was given a punch to the stomach for scheduling purposes, I'm sorry, nobody is going to hear any complaints when it comes to Oklahoma, because if they truly may have the toughest schedule in college football, for all we know. But if they were to go 8-4, that's a winning formula, I think, for Brent Venables going into a prove-it year. It's not the expectations that you have in Norman, nor should it ever be those expectations. But if you have a consistent run game, you feel like that your offensive line has turned the corner, and most importantly, your quarterback play is sufficient, I think anything is possible. I won't throw money down on Oklahoma to go ahead and cut down what would be, I guess, the leather on the football in 2025, but I would at least say that they have a shot. Next good category for me, this is the tier where it's called makes me money tier. And why do I say that? These are teams that when I talk about, people seem to tune in. People seem to really like, and so I'm going to continue to talk about them, which means it's good for my business, and it's good for the show if these teams are actually pretty good. Texas A&M falls in this category. Ole Miss falls in this category. Mizzou and South Carolina fall in this category. Any one of these teams, I think, could be a breakout. Hands down, you do not want to face off against us come early December in the college football playoff roster. Any single one of these teams. All these teams still do have questions, though. When you look at South Carolina, went 9-3 last year during the regular season and was a Nicky Manwari pick six sticking around from making the college football playoff. Well, how good is this defense going to be? What are you going to look at with this rushing attack? You no longer have Rocket Sanders. Do you feel like Nick Harbor or Mazeo Bennett or one of the upcoming freshmen that absolutely people believe can be a difference maker will be that very early on in their tenure? Because if that's the case, then South Carolina has the quarterback. They have the offensive personnel with a better offensive line. I think that several of these defensive players, Brandon Cisse, Gabriel Brownlow-Dindy, you also can throw in Justin Okoronkwo. I think all of them are going to hit from the jump. And then you look at their schedule, they'll be proven pretty early on in the year whether or not they're going to fall in this pretender or contender category. Texas A&M, you look at what the Aggies are bringing back, fully healthy this year. 4 starters on the offensive line, 3 running backs that all could be bell cow bruisers on any team in the SEC. And you also have a veteran quarterback that no longer is going through a quote-unquote battle because of Connor Wigman said, I'm going to go play at Houston. And Colin Klein said that this dude is absolutely built for our team. What did that offense take the next step forward? Casey Concepcion comes on in. Mario Craver joins the party from Starkville, Mississippi. And everyone's looking around saying, hey, the explosivity of the passing attack is taking heights. Texas A&M absolutely should belong in this category. And you know what? People think that I hate A&M because I picked against A&M all of last year, and every single time I picked against them, they ended up winning and proving me wrong. So why would I not want A&M to do well or bad? It does wonders for my business because whenever I talk about them, people are so on the fence about how I feel. I'm just saying it's good for me if A&M actually is doing well because people will tune on in just to go ahead and cuss me out. But I do have questions about their defense. What if we don't get more explosivity? What if we continue to see the big shots down the field transpire on Saturdays when it's a Mike Elko defense? What if they still have questions at the cornerback position or the safety position, or they aren't able to have that same impact with losing Shamar Turner, losing Shamar Stewart, losing Nick Scorton? What if Cassius Howell is just a rotational guy and not the difference maker that we all envisioned when he signed on the dotted line from Bowling Green? Little things like that could eventually force a Texas A&M to once again go ahead and wave the white flag and say, hey, we're Texas 8-4, as most people like to make the jokes. Missouri, I'm not going to count on out. My Mizzou brethren, you know how I feel about you. I think we all know how I feel about the Tigers going into 2025. It's a relaxed schedule. It's a year to where, yes, you look at the 3 games that you lost last season. What did they all have in common? Well, every single one was on the road. Alabama, South Carolina, Texas A&M. What do we know about this year? They're all going to be played at Memorial Stadium. You're going to have, I think, a quarterback that has more upside and more potential than what we gave credit to with Bo Pabula coming on in. I think he's going to be a really good fit for what Kirby Moore wants to run. And people are not giving enough credit to what Kevin Coleman was. Last season, in an abysmal offense down in Starkville, Mississippi, still managed to finish top 3 in receiving yards in the SEC, was a difference maker in several of their marquee moments, including the game against Arizona State. And he has been around the block for 4 years in college football. So that's a veteran wide receiver that is going to take over games. Corey Batoon is still calling plays on defense. And I don't think that when you look at the overall schedule, how it pans on out, remember that Columbia, Missouri is going to be filled to the brim on Saturdays until October 18th. That's the first time that Missouri is leaving their home stadium. So you have a 6-game window to set the tone before you ever have to worry about playing in a hostile atmosphere. I'm not ready to doubt Missouri. Neither should you. And then Ole Miss. It's Lane Kiffin. It's Lane Kiffin. He wins in the transfer portal. Half the players that set the tone when they went 11-2 2 years ago were from the transfer portal. And it was coming off a year where expectations were supposed to be through the roof and they never meshed. You had a quarterback in Jackson Dart that really was not playing well, so they brought in Spencer Sanders to add in some competition, and they ended up over-exceeding the goals, and they nearly found their way into a college football playoff appearance, which, again, set the tone for what we know in 2024. So what happened in 2024? They went all in on the transfer portal. They felt like this was a team that should have been built to go ahead and hoist up a national title, and they fell short. They never trailed up until the final play against LSU on the road. They beat the brakes off of both South Carolina and Georgia, and yet still they found a way to lose on a 4th and 6 play to Brock Vandergrift, who's retired from college football, and DJ Lagway decided to emerge as the next second coming of Jesus Christ in what we know because of how he played in that fourth quarter against the Rebels. When I have a new quarterback in Austin Simmons coming on in, you have 4 new wide receivers that have all joined from different schools. You also have a veteran offensive line that hasn't played together, but they have experience playing. You have 3 running backs that all could be difference makers on the ground. And your defense, despite losing ample talent, is still built to be one of the better rosters in the SEC. And then you look at their schedule, and once again, where do you find the fault? Yes, okay, losing on the road in Sanford Stadium probably could happen. But what about the rest of it? You play Kentucky in week 2. Don't think for one second that everybody who was a part of that team last year isn't salivating to go travel up to Kroger Field and bag up a bunch of Wildcats for the long term. Don't think for one second they have not thought about that at all. You have an opportunity to once again go 10-2. And 10-2, as we know, is good enough to make the college football playoff. Next team and next year, which for me is probably going to be in the hunt. Now, what does that mean specifically? Doesn't mean you're going to go to the college football playoff. But for my money, I would say you have a pretty good shot. Alabama belongs here. Kalen DeBoer this offseason really put his mark on what is going to be Crimson Tide football. They hired back Ryan Grubb. That was a move that was very well expected. It was very well prophesized. And now he is down in Tuscaloosa acting as the Robin to the Batman. So I feel really good about him now running the show with whoever is going to be QB1. The wide receiver room is vastly underappreciated. Isaiah Horton coming on in from Miami. He had over 700 receiving yards last year. Don't tell me for one second that you pair that with Ryan Williams and Jeremy Bernard with a quarterback that fits the style of offense, that's not going to be explosive. They paid for defensive players not to go to the NFL draft. So when we appreciate or when we applaud a team like Ohio State doing it, we can't go ahead and crap on what we know when it comes to Alabama doing it. Because that's exactly what happened with Ohio State. Oh, they spent $20 million. No, they didn't. They didn't go into the transfer portal and spend $20 million. They retained the talent that they needed to build an identity around going into what felt like a prove-it year for Ryan Day. And lo and behold, they hoist up a national title. So Alabama's going to be in this category, and I think LSU belongs to this category. Why? Because Brian Kelly finally gets it. People don't realize the politics that go on down in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and the type of culture that needs to be indoctrinated for LSU football to hit its stride. Look at his staff. I want everybody real fast to go to lsutigers.com, go to the football page and look at the coaching staff. Go through their bios. What do they all have in common? They have ties to the state of Louisiana. And so they've been recruiting in the state of Louisiana, landing premier talent. Top 10 talent. Guys that at one point were looking at Texas and Alabama and Georgia and Ohio State. No, they're all now going to be wearing the purple and gold, and they're going to be prideful on having the opportunity to represent their hometown state. The schedule, in my opinion, is manageable. I think when you also retain your starting quarterback who threw for over 4,000 yards last year, that's a pretty good step in the right direction. It's also a second season for Blake Baker's defense. Now, again, we've heard some reports coming out of spring practice where the offense is still very underwhelming at this point. They can't establish a run game. The offensive line is taking a step back. There are some question marks I have for LSU. Well, should. But I also say to myself, if I have question marks for LSU, is that because of the defense is hitting its stride at the right time? See, I can turn any negative into a positive. If the defense right now is winning in practice after how abysmal it was for times last season, how terrible it was in a year they should have won the national title, I think I'm okay with that. Because I know Garrett Nussmeier is going to hit his stride at some point. I know for a fact that you're going to see a wide receiver, whether it be Barian Brown or Aaron Anderson, or it be Nick Anderson, who was a freshman All-American, hit their stride. And Bauer Sharp's going to kind of find his way. Joe Sloan's going to get the best out of this offense. So I think that you belong in this category as well. The last team I'm throwing in this category, it's got to be Tennessee. And the reason why I say Tennessee is because of I look right now at where this offense is. And we're going to get into that in a minute, so I don't want to go into too much detail. But where this offense is, it's very exciting. It's very promising. A lot because of what Nico Iamaleava is going to be. I tried to warn everybody last year. Let's not put the wagon before the checkered orange and white horse, okay? Because Nico, I thought, was going to be a very talented quarterback. But I wasn't ready to crown him the next second coming of Peyton Manning. I thought this defense had to play well. I thought this offensive line had to play well. And I thought that the wide receivers were going to have to help out with making sure that Nico took that step forward. Well, the offensive line didn't do its job. Wide receivers were dropping balls left and right. Nico had his moments of struggle, but finally got into a notion of winning formula. And the defense was able to go ahead and catapult itself into a 10-win season. Plus, you had a great run game when it came with Dylan Sampson. And lo and behold, you were going to the college football playoff. You add all of that together, and you say to yourself, well, we no longer have Dylan Sampson. Our defense is going to take a step back. Are we in a good spot? Yes, I would say so. Number one, your schedule is extremely manageable, and you should be able to get to 9-10 wins. That's just a given. Number two, the thing that really stood out about that 2022 team, the one that I look at when it was a very solid overall roster of consistency, was they had great wide receiver play, and they had a good plethora of running backs, not just one dude that stood out in craziness. Well, they have that this year. You brought in Star Thomas. You have Deshaun Bishop. There's really good reports coming out about Deshaun Bishops. And it feels like that this wide receiver room, albeit right now a little unproven, very much got a ton of upside. The reports coming out about Chris Brazzell are promising. Travis Smith, the freshman, he seems to be somebody that we're going to have to know his name. You think that Mike Matthews is going to hit at some point. And so the wide receiver room that was a problem last year may be promising in 2025. You throw that in with how the schedule is going to go. I think that you look at Tennessee as one of those teams that probably going into the final month of November, going into that week 13 weekend, they're pretty good. And then, of course, you have should consider a lock. Now, I don't think that anybody should be considered a lock, but when you look at Georgia and you look at Texas, they absolutely, I think, have the rosters, and they have built themselves up to where they belong in that category. Texas, yes, you're replacing a lot on the offense. 4 new starting offensive linemen, a brand new starting running back with Jaden Blue going off to the NFL, brand new starting quarterback, 3 new wide receivers and a tight end. But if Arch Manning is as everyone says he is, and everyone says that he is going to be one of the best quarterbacks we've ever seen, and by the way, if you watch the film, it's very, very promising. And real quickly, we have over 700 people watching. So like the video, hit the ring notification, and subscribe to the channel. That way you don't miss out on the content. If he is as advertised, and let's just say he takes another step forward in year 3 of running the system underneath Steve Sarkisian, doesn't that mean that probably your quarterback play is going to be the reason why you're going to Atlanta? Year 2 of the SEC. It's probably going to be a reason why you're favored in almost every single game. You got the game week 1 against Ohio State. That might be the only game where you have a plus sign attached to your record. They still have a stellar defense too, by the way, that's going to bail them out of trouble. Mookie Taft didn't go anywhere this offseason. You still have Anthony Hill, for my money, the 3rd best player in college football. A second season of Colin Simmons really now hitting his stride. You also have a great defensive line that's headlined by Trey Moore coming on back, former AAC Defensive Player of the Year, who, by the way, when he finally caught it all together and the notion and the legs were all clicking at the same time, became a pretty good overall balanced defensive end, outside linebacker hybrid that got to the quarterback and added pressure. And then you throw in your schedule where, yes, the Florida game is going to be more challenging this year. Yes, you got to go travel to Sanford Stadium. Yes, Oklahoma's offense is going to be better. You still finish with the #1 recruiting class with that SEC logo attached to your name. So if talent continues to hit the way that we have seen and be developed the way that we've seen, why are we doubting Texas? And then if you want to go ahead and be the person to doubt Georgia because of it's Kirby Smart having a what quote unquote underwhelming offseason, be my guest, but I'm not going to do that. Death taxes, Kirby Smart finding his way into the college football playoffs should be solidified at this point. I know the quarterback play is going to be inconsistent right now. I also know that you got to talk about what happened last year with the wide receivers. Those wide receivers are gone. You have a healthy Colby Young that's not going to be dealing with off-the-field concerns. You're bringing in Zachariah Branch, who, if you've talked to anybody down in Athens, GA, They love what they have seen from him, and he's already caught up the page on every bit of the playbook. Noah Thomas is going to be an X factor inside the red zone, and you throw in Dylan Bell and Oscar Delp, who were probably the two best wide receivers for that team last year. You feel pretty overall decent about the direction that you're going in. And again, it's a Kirby Smart defense. Why at all would you doubt anything that goes on there? Be my guest. But that'd be my tier list when it comes to the SEC going into 2025 for contender status. Yes, you have your top two. You have about 3 or 4 teams that I think are going to fall into that 10-11 win range. You got your good for business teams, the not betting money, but not going to be shocked if it happens. And then, of course, let's just make a bowl game. Like the video, hit the ring notification, and, of course, subscribe to the channel because we talk college football every single day. And if you haven't already, please make sure that you do me a favor. Win some money. Literally win any bit of money that you can, because why would you not want to be a little bit richer this upcoming spring season? You got Easter around the corner. You want to go buy your kids maybe one of those gifts from the Easter Bunny. You got to go ahead and pay the bills. Why not pay the bills with FanDuel? This bracket season, FanDuel is letting you make the call, because right now new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when you win your first $5 bet. That's 200 extra bucks in bonus bets from everything from clutch shots to last second heartbreaks, and even figuring out who's cutting down the nets. Is it going to be South Carolina and Florida? Is it going to be UConn and Houston? If you've been waiting to join it, there is no better time than the present. There's tournament action closing in over the next 2 days, and FanDuel is letting you make amazing type of bets like spreads, totals, game props, and so much more. I'm really interested in that 1.5 point line for Florida. I think that there's a lot going into that, and the comeback, though, of Houston and being an H-Town native, it kills me, but that line of plus 1.5 just feels a little bit too short for a team like Houston to cover. That feels like Florida maybe cutting down the nets. Whatever you want to go ahead and bet, visit FanDuel.com/SECU and get in on all the college hoops action for the rest of the tournament, which of course is only over the next 48 hours. Disclaimer: must be 21 and present in select states, 18 and present in DC. First online real wager money only. $5 first deposit is required. Bonus issued with non-withdrawable bonus bets, which expire 7 days after receipt. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. FanDuel is offering sports wagering in Kansas under the agreement of the Kansas Star Casino, LLC. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit FanDuel.com/RG. Call 1-888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org/chat in Connecticut, or visit mdgamblinghelponline.org in Maryland. Hope is here. Visit mdgamblinglinema.org or call 800-327-5050 for 24/7 support in Massachusetts, or call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY in New York. All right, now that's out of the way, let's talk about Tennessee. Tennessee, for those of you that don't know, had a spring scrimmage last week, and it was a good one. In fact, the people that I spoke to recently, they said it was a great one for multiple reasons, but let's start off with the biggest one. Nico Iamaleava is in control. Nico Iamaleava looks like the quarterback that many people envisioned last season. And as I've already told you guys multiple times since last year, I never thought that you had to put all of the pressure on number 8 to be the number one reason for success. I thought that that was facetious at best to go ahead and trust a redshirt freshman to have to be all the problem solver in literally a span of a weekend. But you don't have to do that anymore. That's a good thing. So you look right now and you hear some reports that he was averaging last season about 7.8 yards a pass. Seems like he's uncorking it. The word explosiveness has been utilized down in Knoxville, Tennessee multiple times this spring. And they feel like that they're getting that back. They feel like that version of the offense that we saw in 2022 when Hendon Hooker was on his pathway to making it to New York City for a Heisman Trophy presentation and Tennessee in the race for a college football playoff, that's there. Now, we all know what happened that season, and unfortunately for Tennessee fans, they had to settle for an Orange Bowl win over Clemson, but you'll take at least a step in the right direction with this offense headlined by your quarterback that many people believe can be the reason why Tennessee is singing like it's 1998. They feel like that he has taken those controls, and it's more so he's comfortable taking over games. So one of the big question marks that you have as a young quarterback is, how much control do I have in the huddle? How much say do I have for the rest of this personnel? Last season, a lot of people that I spoke to said that there was some hesitation. This season, no questions asked. I'm locked in. I'm your guy. I know how to handle this. I'm ready to go ahead and take us to new heights. That's the feeling about the offense right now when it comes to the passing attack. They also really like what they have seen from Deshaun Bishop in the run game. Now, they're going to be a running back room that I think has a lot of plays. Lewis is going to get involved. I think Star Thomas is going to get involved. But they feel like Deshaun Bishop is their guy. This is somebody who is going to take that next step forward, put himself on the map as one of the breakout candidates in the SEC on the ground. He was a very solid secondary running back last year, but now they feel like that he can be the difference maker. He can average about 5.5 yards per play. They think that he can get through the trenches into the second level of the defense and force defensive backs to miss left and right, which is good because of now it takes more pressure again off of Nico to have to play the savior role. So now you got a really solid number one running back. They also want to talk about what's going to happen with the wide receiver rooms, because if you're having explosivity on offense, you probably got to have it on more than just the ground game. Travis Smith, remember the name, write it down, put it on your wall, and come back here in about 7 or 8 months. Figure out why he was so important. He so far has been the star breakout candidate in the world of the SEC for practice in Tennessee. They love what they've seen from him. Good route runner, great catch radius. They're not going to name him a starter from what I've heard, from what I've gathered, from what I've heard, but he is going to have an impactful role. Now, what does that impact mean? Maybe it's 9 or 10 reps a game where he is vertically blowing downfield for an easy 6 points. And he may end up having 25 catches for 425 yards, but he's averaging 19.2 yards a catch. And he's getting 7 touchdowns. Those 7 touchdowns could be the difference of what we see from Nico's growth from year 1 to year 2 underneath Hypo as QB1. And then you're hearing good reports coming out about Chris Brazzell. You're thinking that Mike Matthews is taking that next step forward. Braylon Staley in the slot, they have high hopes for. They think that last season wasn't fully up to space. He was dealing with some things off the field with injury-wise. Fully healthy. They think he is going to be what Squirrel White was supposed to be last year. Maybe not as fast, but definitely a chain mover. The offensive line, they feel really good about Zalance Hurd, how he has progressed. Last season, definitely a year that you want to forget about on the blind side. This season, they feel like that he is going to take that necessary step forward to where we will be talking about him winning a lot of his one-on-one battles, whether that be against Florida, whether that be against Georgia, whether that be against Syracuse week 1. The expectation from what I'm hearing is growth has been established on the left side of the offensive line. They also brought in the transfer, of course, Sam Pendleton from Notre Dame. He could be a starter pretty much right away. Same thing with Spraggins coming on it. Same thing with the kid from Washington State. Why am I blanking on it? Was it Oregon? Maybe it was, no, it wasn't Washington State. Arizona, that was it. They think Wendell Moe. Wendell Moe is going to start somewhere on the offensive line. David Sanders is the last name that we have to go ahead and throw in here. The hope is that if he doesn't start week 1, it's not a problem. They think that, again, this is a kid that they are banking on the long term, being an anchor on the offensive line. He's already proven that he can work with the first team reps. Came on in this past spring, started off with the 2s, has worked his way up to the first team offense. He's rotating in, so he hasn't won the job entirely, but they do have a good feeling that by the end of the year, he will be the full-time starter, which is a great thing because then it feels like that you're hitting reset on your offensive line in a good stance from where it was last year. You throw all this together, it's a sign in the right direction that Tennessee's offense is going to be as advertised. Now, I'm not saying that this has to be an offense that scores 45 a game. I am saying, though, that if you can average about 32 a game, you have more consistency in the passing attack. You have an established number 1 wide receiver. You are taking those necessary steps forward with the ground game being a complementary piece rather than the only X factor. Then that's a sign that, yes, Tennessee, with this schedule, they should be really well put together. The final thing I want to talk about with Tennessee, their defense. Right now, you do not have Jermon McCoy. He's still dealing with the torn ACL. They do wonder about that secondary. That was a thing that last season I had my questions and concerns about. And it was something that a lot of people throughout the SEC season had with Tennessee. Now, after the Oklahoma game, I said I would stop doubting the secondary. That was a promise that I made, and I did so for the rest of the year. They had their lows. We already know what happened in Columbus, Ohio. We don't need to relive that memory. We don't have to go anywhere near that memory. In fact, we should probably burn it out of our corneas and never speak of it again. But they still have the question marks there. Now, you know Boo Carter is going to be a stud. Everyone in Knoxville knows that Boo Carter is going to be that dude. But you need to have a running mate. Who is that guy right now? That'll be a question that I think is going to be answered by the end of fall camp. Anybody who's hearing some reports, anybody who's hearing things about X players standing on out, that's great. All fine and dandy. I get that we work in this industry to hype up teams to get people excited about the season. But when it comes to that secondary, let's press pause for a second. It's okay that right now Tennessee does not have a stable answer at cornerback 2 or at the safety spot. It's okay that there are some concerns when it comes to maybe the nickel position, or that you're watching as a freshman that just a few months ago was playing against 4-star talent in high school is burning past you left and right. It's okay. It's spring. We don't need to jump to any conclusion at this point right now. It's okay to be in a wait and see mode. That is my wait and see when it comes to Tennessee right now. I'm waiting to figure out who is going to be that breakout candidate alongside with Boo Carter. And we know Jabbar McCoy is going to be fine whenever he gets back there. So Tennessee's defense, I think, is still going to be fine. They are losing talent. You are going to no longer have the most deep defensive line in college football, for my money. But you are going to be at least a defense that I think could still be the reason why your team is punching its ticket to the college football playoff. Schedule-wise, they should be really well put together. Again, early on, Syracuse, Eastern Tennessee. The Georgia game is in week 3. That's a big-time get for you to where you're going to be fully healthy. Mississippi State, Arkansas, Alabama, closing out the year with Florida, New Mexico State, and Vanderbilt. I look at this team and I say to myself, if they can get established early, by the time they go into Tuscaloosa to play Alabama on the third Saturday in October, which again, now this is a rivalry worth bringing up every single offseason as much as possible, I think that you feel pretty confident about the direction that Tennessee is going in. Explosivity on offense, we saw it in 2022. We get Kirkland brand version of that. But Nico is as advertised with the Hendon Hooker style. Pretty good spot. Pretty good spot when it comes to, I think, volunteer football going into a year where it does feel open. And it does feel like that we're kind of forgetting about Tennessee. I'm not forgetting about what's going on in Neyland right now. And I'm not forgetting about what that fan base has waited to see for a while. So let's not go ahead and jump to conclusions, but let's be positive about the direction that a place like Tennessee is going. Like, review, hit subscribe. Make sure you're following us on all the social channels, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and SEC Unfiltered. 2 more subjects for you before we get on out of here. I am doing bluebonnet photos with my dogs and my wife and my family today, and my future niece. So I'm very excited to see how that goes. So I got to get on out of here and take a shower real fast. New subject that we're going to do on Sunday Funday moving forward every single week. Hypothetical. What do I believe is more likely in 2025? It could be any subject, whether it be personnel or quarterback play or coaches on the hot seat, whatever it is. Hypothetical today. What is more likely in 2025? Ole Miss being a college football playoff contender, or Oklahoma being bad for a second year in the SEC? Well, let's just look at Oklahoma real fast. We know what the expectations are. We know what the goals are, and we know what should be as expected by the fan base out in Norman. You believe that you should be a college football playoff force because you are a blue blood school. And I'm not going to doubt that. I'm not going to take that away from you because I do believe that Oklahoma standards should be as expected. What I will say is that with this schedule, which is brutal to say the least, there are going to be questions to where you got to kind of take it with a grain of salt. Brent Venables is on the hot seat. Everybody knows this. Everybody knows the expectations for him to succeed are pretty set in stone. And if he doesn't meet a certain criteria, you're probably lost. But I will say, what are realistic goals? 8-4. If you get to 8-4 with this schedule, Michigan, wild card team that we have no idea what to expect, especially with Bryce Underwood potentially starting in week 2. Auburn, who's to say what that offense is going to look like? You know what the quarterback is, so that's probably a benefit. Texas, South Carolina, Ole Miss, Tennessee, Alabama, and then LSU to close out the year. That is a brutal way to call it a stretch. Like most people would say, if you go 7-5 in that season, that's probably a winning formula. You go 8-4, you're safe. Now, what are some things that I do like about this real fast? Number one, the offense is not going to be any worse than it was last year. In fact, you can probably say that offense that we saw was a one and done in the SEC for any team ever, because if that's the way that you're going to go, then you probably belong in more so, I would say, the Southland Conference. Yes, I am going to that level. You have a new offensive coordinator in that fits the identity of what has worked at Oklahoma for years. Up-tempo, passing attack, very good run game. Ben Arbuckle's coming on in from Pullman, Washington. And he's already brought in his quarterback coach. And just to go ahead and add in some more fun, they brought in the quarterback too. That would be a 3-time package deal. And it's ended up being really well. You got John Mateer, who is going to be the ultimate joker card in the stack of deck that is the SEC football this year. if he plays the way that he did against Mountain West and Pac-12, I guess Pac-2 competition, you're talking about a guy that's going to throw for over 3,800 yards, have over 40 plus touchdowns, run for at least another 700 yards, and keep you in games all the way down to the finish line. The best part is that this offensive line is going to be better because of it's a full year of working with Bill Beatonbow, and they went out and they brought in the number one offensive tackle in the class this year. They also feel really good about the health. I've already said this before. And my Mizzou brethren, I'm going to piss some of you off right now, and it's okay. I still claim you, and I still love you. But I believe that if you had one healthy wide receiver in that game, fully healthy wide receiver, Mizzou does not win against Oklahoma. In fact, I get it. You had to go ahead and play without Brady Cook. We already know what it was coming with when we got to bring up his name, Drew Pine. We don't like talking about him that much. But still, I thought for the most part, Oklahoma had a better first half. I thought Oklahoma had a better second. I thought Oklahoma had a better second half. They just fell apart in the fourth quarter. I will die on that take, and I'm guaranteed okay with that. I think if they had a healthy wide receiver core, they would have at least put up a better fight against Ole Miss on the road. That absolutely would have been something that could have occurred. But I also do believe that if they had any kind of help at the wide receiver position in that matchup against South Carolina, it wouldn't have been 27-0 going into that game. It wouldn't have been. I think that you gave up on Jackson Arnold way too early. So still, there were memories, there were remnants of this team last year that I at least can say, I thought 8-4 was possible. You were a swing or two away from probably saying, yeah, we're okay. We can be in that 8-win range. And maybe the tone and the dialect around BV is different. I have a very hard time believing that Oklahoma, with their standard, with their expectations, with who they just hired as a GM and Jim Nagy, is going to be down and out of the count. But the question is, what do I believe more? That Oklahoma will be better in 2025, or that Ole Miss of all teams, is still going to be in the hunt for a college football playoff berth? Well, let's start with this. Ole Miss's schedule is a joke, and that's okay. Sometimes you are blessed with having the college football gods on your side and believing that you are going to be a team that is able to withstand anything. Missouri had that last year. People were shooting down Missouri and were shooting down Indiana, and I'm saying to myself, well, they still got to 11-1, and the other team still got to 10-3. Ole Miss got 10-3 last year. Those are expectations that are well established now in Oxford, Mississippi. And they did so via the transfer portal. Lane Kiffin last year finally established himself as a damn good recruiter. Look at some of the names that are in this past year's recruiting class. Cunningham. Caleb Cunningham. Let's talk about him for a second. This is a kid that was a 5-star wide receiver that had offers from every major school in America and said, nah, I'm going to stay close to home. I'm going to play in front of my hometown crowd, and I'm going to be a part of Rebel Nation moving forward. Not to mention what they were able to bring in the transfer portal. They feel really good about that wide receiver room. Caden Lee has kind of shown last season when he had to in place of Jordan Watkins, he can be a quality number 2. They think he can be a number 1. The relationship with him and Austin Simmons is reportedly booming at this point, which is a good thing. And then you throw in a defense that, yes, is going to be missing talent like J.J. Pegues and Walter Nolan and Chris Paul. And you say to yourself, well, if my offense could be a little bit more explosive, if I could have one wide receiver break on out, whether that be Harrison Wallace or Jajon Stribling, or maybe it is Cunningham. Maybe it's him. Maybe it's Caleb Odom, former 5-star Alabama wide receiver. One of those dudes ends up hitting. Am I not in a good direction? Have I not established myself as at least a guy that, or a team that is supposed to be trending upward? I think Austin Simmons is the real deal. I think the fact that he is going to have an entire offseason to play QB1 and not worrying about baseball, fully focused on being the future heir apparent of Jackson Dart, I think that's a great thing. But I think right now I would lean with Oklahoma. John Mateer coming on in, I think changes the overall persona of what we know about Sooners football. Now, I'm not saying that it's going to be one of these breakout overall high-tempo expectations. I'm not saying that we can guarantee write them down into the college football playoff. That would be moronic of me, and it would be childish of me. And as much as I do have an infatuation and an appreciation for what Sooner Country has done for my business and for how I've been able to take that next step forward in my career, I'm not going to go to those levels just yet. I'm not. What I will say is the wide receiver room is going to be healthy. It should be, at least on paper, going into this year. The offensive line should be better than what it was last season. So a win in itself right there. The defense underneath Brent Venables, whether or not we agree that is going to be missing some pieces like a Danny Stutzman, like a Billy Bowman, they've recruited the right type of talent in there to still be able to take those necessary steps forward. And you're having an offense that's going to look completely different than what it was last season. So if you're asking me, I can believe that this is an 8-4 team, which again, that's what I'm trying to go with. I'm not saying they are going to be in the college football playoff. I'm saying that they can be an 8-4 team this year over an Ole Miss team that does have questions when it comes to the run game, does have questions when it comes to the quarterback room for now, and does have questions when it comes to its defense on being that 10-win roster that's in the hunt for the college football playoff. I'm going to say the hypothetical that I would lean is Oklahoma. I think Oklahoma has the right quarterback in the right system with John Mateer. I think Oklahoma has the right personnel when it comes to the wide receivers. And I think Oklahoma has an opportunity to be a better offensive line. And if all things are schemed up properly, they're probably still going to lose in the Red River Shootout. They're probably still going to lose in a game against Georgia. They're probably still going to lose to South Carolina. But I look overall at where the roster is, and I think it's enough to believe that yes, right now, they're probably going to get to 8-4. That's what I'm looking at this point. You tell me that both teams go 8-4. Well, I absolutely win the hypothetical when it comes to what is going to be Oklahoma football for 2025. Like, review, hit subscribe. Make sure you're following us on all the social channels. Before we get on out of here, I do want to talk about Alabama's quarterback room real fast. And for those of you who are watching, Alabama fans, let's not jump to any conclusions. So if you haven't heard the press conference from Kalen DeBoer talking about the quarterback position, for the most part, pretty docile. You're not going to find out much information. Kind of leaving it with an open-ended book. You want to know who else did that? Nick Saban. For years, Nick Saban won't let you know any bit of information about that program. Hey, yeah, quarterback room is really good. Yeah, we like both Jake Coker and we like Blake Sims. Yeah, Tua versus Jalen. We know that. We really think that Blake Barnett is going to be one of those guys. We really think that we're going to have a quarterback battle that will go well into the season. And then like week 1 rolls around and you're watching as USC takes the field and here comes Jalen Hurts. And now it's a moot point. And then it's it's Tua Tagovailoa's time. Are we going to have Tua? You know, we brought in this 5-star kid and he's supposed to be the second cut, and then it was Jalen Hurts. Like, that's what we know about Alabama football. Here's the best part, though. Either way you look at it, I think that the quarterback room is going to be safe. You can go with the veteran in Ty Simpson, who's been around the block and has been inside of Tuscaloosa for what feels like a century at this point. He already knows what is expected of the quarterback role. He already knows what the type of pedigree it is to play at Alabama and what it means to don that number on the side of the helmet when you break the huddle. He understands all that. And he's had the opportunity in multiple appearances during the Nick Saban regime and even during the Kalen DeBoer regime to show why he is one of the best quarterbacks that has yet to see the field. And I think it would work. You could go with the kid that was brought in, hand-selected by Ryan Grubb and Kalen DeBoer to follow him from Seattle. That would be Austin Mack. Mack was viewed as the second heir apparent down in Seattle for Michael Penix Jr., a Heisman Trophy finalist, comes on into Tuscaloosa, competes for the job, QB3 last year. He knows what is expected in a Ryan Grubb system. He knows what Ryan Grubb is looking for in his quarterback, and that's a win in itself. And he ends up actually looking pretty good and pretty polished in practice for the last few weeks to where it feels like that it's no longer a moot point of, do we go with the veteran or do we go with the kid? And then, of course, we got to talk about the kid, which is Keelan Russell. Russell is the guy that Kalen DeBoer is banking on being a star in the long term. And if you have not watched any of his film from his time when he was at Duncanville High School, I highly recommend to do so. It is probably going to be one of the more infatuating things that you will drift off to sleep thinking about tonight. That is already transitioning into Tuscaloosa. So you feel good about him being the long-term ploy. If he ends up being the short-term ploy, that's a good thing too. But when I look right now, the best part about this quarterback battle is that I don't think there's a wrong answer. I think it's just, what do you feel like that you have to worry about? If you feel like that right now, the quarterback has to be the X factor, the determining role, and more importantly, the guy that elevates your team, I think you take Keelan Russell out of that conversation completely. Now it's an Austin McIntyre Simpson battle. If you feel like that, hey, our wide receivers are really good. Our offensive line is better than advertised. Jaden Roberts is playing out of his mind. Cam Dewberry is a really good fit for us. Caden Proctor looks like the version that we saw when we brought him in from Iowa and we flipped him at the last minute back in 2023. If that's what we're getting, if that's the version, then you can say to yourself, Keelan Russell has the best potential. Keelan Russell has the most upside, and Keelan Russell gives us our best chance to break records this year. Okay, start the kid. Let the era begin in 2025. And if you just want to go with the dude that feels the most comfortable in the system underneath Kalen DeBoer and Ryan Grubb, then start Austin Mack and then let him show you that he is not the right guy for the job. Your season is starting off on a note where we are in the unknowns right now. We don't know what Wisconsin's going to be. We don't know what Florida State's going to be. Florida State, underneath Thomas Castellanos, could end up being the breakout team in the ACC. And that 1 year dud that was 2024 is a thing of the past for Mike Norvell. He saves his job, gets a brand new contract extension, and now we're talking about the Seminoles going to the college football playoff. That could happen. It also could be another dud year. Wisconsin, we have no idea what they're going to be. They have Billy Edwards coming on in as their new starting quarterback. It feels like a much better fit for the style of offense they want to run with new OC Jeff Grimes. But this really feels like a prove-it year for Luke Fickell, even though he just got a contract extension, because of he is underwhelmed in Madison for what the goals and the expectations are supposed to be for Badger football. That game is also going to be played in Tuscaloosa this year, which again is another win for you. So you have 2 or 3 games to really get yourself prepared before you have to go actually face off against some good competition, which for my money starts in about week five after a bye, when you got to take on Georgia down in Athens, GA. If you can find out who your quarterback is at that point, that's a win in itself. But if you're trying to go and read through the tea leaves and try and figure out what Kalen DeBoer is saying, who is the favorite, who should be in the running, which guy is actually taking the next step forward, you're not going to get it. And you're certainly not going to get it on message boards, and you're certainly not going to get it on articles. You're going to have to wait until the end of fall camp. And maybe that's a good thing, because if all three are either pushing each other to that level, that's a sign that, yes, Alabama is great at the quarterback position. They're in a very good spot to where, hey, last year, we know that we were trusting Jalen Milroe, but we knew that one of these two could start. Oh, yeah, it was easily able to believe that, yeah, we could easily buy into Ty Simpson. Oh, yeah, we want to throw him out there. We want to save him for this season. Yeah, Austin Mack, this was the version that we thought we were going to get in Seattle. Any one of those things is possible. But Alabama right now, just because they haven't named a starting quarterback, or just because they don't know what direction they're going in the starting quarterback, which, yes, I truly do believe at this point, Kalen DeBoer has no idea where he is going. It's not a lost cause. It's actually, I think, a blessing in disguise for Tuscaloosa, for everyone out in Tuscaloosa. And maybe we'll find out a little bit more after A-Day, or what is going to be the version of A-Day that they're calling it this year, that things are going to be promising. We have gone for over 50 minutes. I have got to get ready to go take family photos. So real quickly, like the video, hit the ring notification, and of course, subscribe to the channel. That way we keep up with the college football content every single day here on Sunday Funday. We're going to figure out tomorrow, Dave and I are talking about if overtime drive is happening because of the national championship with Florida. If not, I will see you all on Thursday. And when we do see you on Thursday, it's mailbag day. So get your questions in. Make sure that you're following us on the socials at SEC Unfiltered, at Mr. Cole Thompson. Get your questions in so that way we have a fun, jam-packed mailbag for you on Thursday evening when we go break down everything that is happening currently in the SEC. Like, review, hit subscribe. Make sure that you're following me at Mr. Cole Thompson. Until next time, for Chris Phillips, for Dave Shoemate, for Harrison Fant, for all of us at SEC Unfiltered, I am Cole Thompson. Have a good rest of your weekend. And remember, you only live life once, so go ahead and live on the edge. Bye.